Yesterday lingers softly in memory, as Ichinose Kazumi, cheerful and unguarded, calls out to Fumika with an easy smile, inviting her to walk home together, as if it's the most natural thing in the world. His hand lifts in a casual wave, his voice light, but the moment lands heavily on Nimi Fumika, who stiffens. The thought alone sends her spiraling. If anyone were to see them like this, walking side by side, they might misunderstand. They might think they're dating. Her flustered reaction spills out, half protest, half panic, while Kazumi, unfazed, casually admits his house is near hers, and more plainly, that he likes her anyway. The sincerity in his tone clashes with her rising embarrassment, leaving her unsure how to respond, as he suddenly dashes off, promising he'll wait despite being late for his club, his figure disappearing with that same carefree energy he arrived with. Left alone, Fumika exhales a quiet sigh. Anyway, she covers her mouth with a small, helpless smile, her cheeks faintly flushed, and murmurs that it can't be helped. After school, the quiet hallway hums with routine, until Kazumi suddenly bursts forward, calling out Fumika's name with that same bright energy, only to be cut short as he crashes straight into someone with a sharp, jarring impact. The collision knocks the breath out of him, a pained ouch slipping out as papers scatter across the floor, the moment turning chaotic in an instant. The girl he collided with freezes for only a second, before dropping to her knees, flustered as she apologizes over and over. Kazumi, now crouched nearby, watches her with confusion, trying to interrupt the spiral as he admits it was his fault, questioning what exactly she's doing as her repeated apologies only grow louder. She looks up as her soft smile radiates warmth, almost too kind for the situation. Though the boy hesitates, unsure how to respond, he accepts, surprised by her sincerity. She laughs lightly and insists they're not strangers, suggesting anyone could be a friend if given the chance. Her words linger longer than they should, as she thanks him with a bright, disarming smile. As they part ways, he can't quite shake the encounter, noting how unusual she seemed, yet oddly pleasant, even as he reminds himself of a promise to walk home with someone else, brushing off the strange feeling that follows him into the next day, where everything shifts without warning, when another girl, flustered, desperate, and trembling, suddenly asks him to go to her house, her urgency overwhelming, leaving him stunned as she blurts out the request with teary intensity. And despite his confusion, he agrees, if only because she has no one else to turn to. Time passes awkwardly, conversations stumble forward, and then, beneath the fading light after school, the first girl reappears, her presence calm, yet heavy with unspoken intent, as she apologizes for the wait and asks to talk, her gaze fixed on him with unsettling clarity. And before he can fully process it, she confesses she likes him, asks him to go out with her, yet his reaction is immediate, conflicted, because there is already someone else he cares about, and the name slips out almost reflexively, creating a quiet fracture between them. But she doesn't break, doesn't lash out, she simply asks him to imagine a world where that other girl doesn't exist, her voice soft, almost pleading, as she wonders aloud if, in that version of reality, he could have loved her instead. And when he struggles to answer, she accepts it with a fragile smile, claiming she'll be fine, even as something in her expression darkens, something that doesn't match the gentleness she's been showing. The moment ends too quickly, leaving him uneasy, questioning if he had been too harsh, if he misunderstood something. But those thoughts are cut short when he arrives at the other girl's house, only to be greeted by a scene that feels unreal. Blood staining the floor, her body collapsed and unmoving, and standing there, calm and composed, is the same girl who had just confessed to him, her presence now suffocating. As the truth crashes down all at once, she speaks as if nothing is wrong, as if this is natural, asking if he's okay, even offering casual advice to steady his breathing, while gripping a knife still wet with what she's done, her smile returning, brighter than ever, as she suggests they could go out together now, since the obstacle between them is gone. His mind spirals, trying to reject what he's seeing, clinging to the idea that this must be a mistake, but her words press in closer, sharper, as she reminds him if that girl were never there, things would be different, and now, in her eyes, that possibility has become reality. When others begin to appear, drawn by the chaos, she reacts without hesitation, ordering him to discard the weapon, to run, to follow her lead as if this were all just another trivial problem, and in the midst of confusion and fear, he's pulled along, unable to fully resist, unable to fully comprehend, as her final declaration settles in with chilling certainty. She belongs to him now, and he, whether he understands it or not, belongs to her. Since then, 6 years have passed, where we see Ichinose. His hand moves across the canvas, painting without clear intent, dark, tangled strokes forming unconsciously, reflecting a mind he doesn't fully understand, while a classmate calls out to him, casually noting it's time to head home, breaking him from that distant haze as he turns, expression dull, almost detached, unable to explain what he's even creating, brushing it off as just something on his mind, though even he doesn't understand it. The conversation drifts awkwardly, touching on friendships he doesn't quite have. His response is curt, guarded, until a sudden interruption shifts the atmosphere entirely. A girl steps forward, introducing herself brightly, her energy sharp and direct as she smiles and greets him without hesitation. Her name is Yatsuya Shino, and before he can even process her presence, she blurts out her feelings with overwhelming force. Confessing that she likes him in front of everyone, her face flushed, her voice trembling yet determined. The moment hangs in the air, heavy and embarrassing, and though she quickly backtracks, flustered, insisting it wasn't meant to be like that, it's clear this isn't the first time she's been repeating it, day after day, her persistence unwavering, refusing to give up, no matter how many times she's ignored. He tries to move past it, suggesting they go somewhere else, but even as they walk, her presence lingers too close. Her attention fixed entirely on him, while his thoughts drift elsewhere, dragged back to that memory he can't escape. The blood, the body, the quiet smile of the girl who shouldn't be forgotten, and the crushing realization that he couldn't save her. Lunch comes, but he isolates himself, choosing distance over connection, convincing himself it's better this way, that others have their own circles, their own lives. And yet, even in solitude, he isn't left alone for long, as Yatsuya appears again, struggling under the weight of stacked papers, her clumsiness leading to another collision, another moment where she falls apart in front of him, and still, even then, she gathers herself just enough to repeat those same words, "I liked you," like a broken record that refuses to stop. He tries to brush it aside, but her persistence corners him, until finally she asks for something simple, just one date, her hands clasped together, eyes pleading, and despite everything, despite the unease, the confusion, the lingering shadows, he can't bring himself to refuse. Sunday arrives quietly, and he waits, watching the time slip by as she shows up late, apologetic yet smiling, her energy softer now, less overwhelming, and for a moment, things almost feel normal as they walk through the city together, blending into the crowd like any other pair, their conversation light, their steps unhurried. But then, without warning, reality fractures across the street. He sees her, the girl who should no longer exist, standing there as if nothing ever happened, her smile unchanged, her presence undeniable, and his breath catches as the world tilts, memories colliding with what's in front of him, unable to reconcile the two. The noise of traffic surges, a truck rushing past, and in that instant, the vision disappears, leaving him shaken, questioning whether what he saw was real or just a hallucination, born from guilt and fear. Yet the unease doesn't fade, not even when Yatsuya returns his attention with concern, asking if he's all right, her voice grounding him back into the moment. He tries to dismiss it, tries to convince himself it's nothing, that he should forget what happened, but the thought refuses to settle, lingering at the edge of his mind as they continue their date. Small moments passing between them, awkward compliments, quiet laughter, a shared movie, the kind of ordinary experience that should feel comforting. Yet beneath it all, something remains unresolved. As the day comes to an end, he apologizes, admitting he still had fun, his words honest, yet distant, and she sees through it immediately, her expression sharpening as she calls him out, asking why he keeps hiding his true feelings, her voice steady, unwilling to let her retreat behind that mask any longer, and for a moment, there's no escape from the question hanging between them. She stretches her arms out lightly, her voice bright again as she suggests they go to the art museum next time, mentioning how it's close to school, and the casualness of it almost feels like she's already imagining a future that hasn't been agreed upon, catching him off guard as he hesitates and asks how she even knew he liked art, only for her to answer simply that she saw him painting and assumed as much. Her logic straightforward, almost innocent, as she adds that she'll come with him, that it'll be fun. The moment lingers, soft and uncertain, before she steps forward again and tells him plainly that she likes him a lot, and then without hesitation, she goes further, saying she loves him, the words landing heavier this time, no longer brushed off as repetition or habit but carrying a weight that makes him pause. For a second, everything stills. and her face flushes deeply as the realization of what she said catches up to her. Then she breaks awkwardly, abruptly, as she pulls back, shaking her head, insisting she was wrong, that she won't go, that what she said doesn't count, trying to erase the moment entirely. The air grows heavier, and as they part, his thoughts drift back again, uninvited, to those lingering memories, the smiling faces, the blood, the girl he lost, and he apologizes quietly. Not to the one in front of him, but to those memories that refuse to fade, acknowledging that they won't disappear no matter how much time passes. Behind him, she slows her steps, her expression dimming as realization sinks in, a quiet voice inside her concluding that this no longer feels like a date, that he's already refused her in a way that matters more than words, and she calls herself an idiot for expecting anything different. The weight of it settling as she reflects on the day June 4th, thinking that she's already had enough. The scene shifts to an empty classroom, still and silent, the faint echo of a voice asking if it hurts, followed by a single, stark declaration that hangs in the void like an omen. This is the worst day of my life. The next day arrives with a strange heaviness, like something unfinished still clings to him, and the moment he steps into the classroom, that unease sharpens. His friend calls out to him asking what happened, his voice laced with confusion as he points out the obvious absence. Yotsuya isn't at school today, and when questioned, all he can offer is a quiet, uncertain apology, admitting he doesn't know, though the weight in his expression suggests otherwise. The normal rhythm of class tries to resume. A teacher handing him the responsibility of delivering homework to her house, almost too conveniently, and though he resists at first, questioning why it has to be him, he's given no real choice, leaving him standing outside her home later, stiff with hesitation, rehearsing the simplest words in his head, before finally pressing the intercom. A voice answers, and when the door opens, it's not Yotsuya who greets him, but her mother, warm and welcoming. Already aware of him, explaining casually that she's been taking care of Shino, her tone light, unaware of the tension tightening in his chest as she invites him inside and leads him to her room. The space feels ordinary, too ordinary, as Yotsuya sits up in bed, dressed in soft pajamas, her expression lighting up the moment she sees him, her happiness immediate and unfiltered as she tells him she's glad he came, clutching the blanket around her as if to steady herself. He stumbles over his words, awkward, unsure how to act in this unfamiliar situation, while she chatters lightly, mentioning she's already feeling better, even asking if he's caught a cold, her concern gentle, almost natural, as if nothing strange exists between them. He hands over the homework, the simple act grounding him for a moment, and she thanks him with a bright smile, saying she thought he might come, that she wanted to see him, her voice softening as she tries to explain why, only to falter under his confused gaze. He recalls what happened yesterday, the things she said, wondering aloud if she meant them, if she's still thinking about it, and for a brief second, doubt flickers across his mind, questioning whether she even remembers clearly. But then she answers him directly, her eyes steady, as she tells him she still likes him. The words come without hesitation this time, quieter but far more certain, and when he asks why she cares so much, her answer drifts into the past, pulling him with it. She speaks of last year, of a day during entrance exams, when she was completely alone, overwhelmed, standing before a door she didn't have the courage to open, her voice trembling as she admits how difficult even that simple act felt, how being surrounded by strangers paralyzed her, until that moment when someone appeared. Someone who spoke to her despite her awkwardness, who told her she wouldn't be alone anymore, reaching out a hand and inviting her forward. That memory lingers between them as she looks at him now, as if from that day onward, her path had been decided. As her story settles into the room, the weight of it lingers between them, and he finally begins to understand what that single moment meant to her. That small act, that simple reassurance, had rooted itself so deeply that it became everything, shaping the way she sees him, even now. And yet as he listens, something inside him tightens, because he realizes just how different their perspectives are, how something so casual to him became something irreplaceable to her. She watches him carefully, almost nervously, asking if he thinks she's a problem, her voice fragile, despite the smile she tries to maintain. And before he can answer, she presses forward, admitting openly that she wants to be together with him, her emotions spilling out so naturally that it almost feels like she can't hold them back anymore, while he quietly questions himself, wondering why he's even crying, as if his own feelings have become too much for him to contain. Suddenly, without warning, Tears begin to fall from his eyes, catching even himself off guard as he stares down at his trembling hands, unable to explain why he's reacting this way, only knowing that the emotions he's been suppressing are finally spilling over. The moment shifts abruptly when she panics, realizing she's still in her pajamas, her embarrassment flaring up as she tries to recover. But even in that small chaos, the tension doesn't fully fade, and when she mentions that she was told he wasn't absent today, confusion flickers between them, his presence contradicting what she believed, though she quickly brushes it aside with a soft smile, saying she was just happy to see him. He responds quietly, acknowledging it, but his thoughts drift again, pulling him deeper into reflection as he begins to explain himself, talking about when he was younger, about things that happened long before now, about how he had told someone else about it after their date, unaware at the time that those events would lead to something tragic. His voice heavy with hindsight, as the fragments of memory overlap, dark and fragmented, like something he can't fully piece together. She listens carefully, then gently grounds him, pointing out that everything he's talking about happened when he was still in elementary school, reminding him that he's carrying something from the past that doesn't belong entirely to the present. And when he hesitates, struggling to place a name to the memory, the name slips out, Fumika, and the air shifts again. He tries to blame himself, stumbling over his words, but she interrupts softly, telling him she doesn't think it's his fault, even if he believes it is, even if he carries it like a sin, because regardless of that, she doesn't think anyone has the right to stop him from moving forward. Her words are steady, unwavering, and then she reaches out not physically but emotionally, saying she wants to carry that burden with him, reminding him of the very thing he once told her, that she's not alone, and now she returns it, telling him the same applies to him. He freezes at that, her words hitting deeper than he expects. And when he looks at her again, tears spill over once more, raw and unguarded, while she watches him with quiet concern, asking why he's crying, though she already seems to understand. The distance between them closes just slightly, a quiet moment shared, where neither of them fully speaks, yet everything is conveyed, and she smiles softly, almost teasing, calling him a handful as she wipes at his tears, the heaviness easing just enough to let something gentler take its place. Time passes, and eventually he leaves, stepping back into the ordinary world, but the feeling lingers, and back at school, the normal chatter resumes, friends teasing him, asking if he's dating her now, their words light but invasive, while he struggles to answer, caught between confusion and something unspoken, unable to define what this connection really is. The awkwardness hangs between them when they meet again, neither quite sure how to act, until he finally gathers the courage to speak, asking her to come with him, saying there's something he wants to tell her about his feelings, suggesting they go somewhere quieter, like the park, and she agrees instantly, her smile returning as if she's been waiting for this moment all along, her expression filled with a simple, hopeful belief that maybe, just maybe, things will work out. But that fragile hope shatters in an instant. His attention is suddenly drawn away, his body stiffening as something catches his eye, and when he looks closer, the world seems to stop, his breath hitching as horror floods in, because there, hidden in plain sight, lies something unmistakably wrong, a lifeless animal, its body torn and still, an unnatural silence surrounding it, and the realization hits him like a wave, cold and suffocating, as a single thought forms with terrifying clarity. This is where it begins. The moment fractures instantly, the horror too sudden, too unnatural, his breath catches, his hand rising instinctively to cover his mouth as the image burns itself into his mind. The lifeless rabbit crammed into the locker, its body stiff, pierced, wrong in a way that feels deliberate, cruel. And the realization hits him like a delayed shock. This isn't an accident. This is something intentional, something targeted, and the sound that escapes him is barely contained, a quiet, suffocating gasp. Yotsuya collapses from the sheer shock of it, her body giving out as panic overwhelms her, and the next thing he knows, everything shifts to the infirmary, the sterile quiet pressing in as she's told she was just in shock and needs rest. But the calm explanation does nothing to settle the unease gnawing at him. The details start to come together in fragments. Someone points out the obvious, a dead rabbit placed inside her locker, pierced with razor blades. The brutality of it echoing something far too familiar, dragging his thoughts back years to an incident he can't forget, one that now feels disturbingly connected, especially when he realizes the timing, just days ago, and the implication settles heavily in his chest. He tries to rationalize it, tries to steady himself, even questioning his own senses, wondering if what he saw before Midu was real or just a hallucination born from stress. But the unease doesn't fade, not when everything around him starts aligning too perfectly, not when his instincts tell him something is deeply wrong. Yatsuya, still shaken, lashes out in frustration, denying the assumptions others make, her voice sharp as she insists things aren't what they seem, yet even she can't fully hide the fear creeping in beneath it. While he quietly admits to himself that he doesn't know what's real anymore, but he is certain of one thing: something is happening. The tension builds until he makes a decision, his voice firm despite the uncertainty, promising her that he'll protect her, the words coming out before he can second-guess them. And then, with that same resolve, he asks her directly to go out with him, turning what had been hesitation into something definitive. She freezes, overwhelmed, her face flushing as emotion floods in all at once. And through trembling breaths and tearful confusion, she accepts, her voice breaking as she agrees to go out with him. The moment fragile, almost too sudden against the backdrop of everything else unraveling. But even that brief sense of connection is interrupted when the investigation begins. The question of how to contact her parents, leading them back to her belongings, and as her bag is opened, something feels off. Immediately, his gaze sharpens, his hands stilling as he looks inside. And then he sees it. The cutter, the blade, sitting there, unmistakable, stained. The same kind of weapon used on the rabbit, the same kind tied to that memory. And the realization hits hard. This was in her bag. Confusion spreads instantly as she denies any knowledge of it, her voice shaking as she insists she doesn't know why it's there, why it has blood on it, while the others begin to piece it together, the possibility forming that someone is trying to frame her, that this isn't coincidence but something calculated. The atmosphere tightens, the situation escalating from disturbing to dangerous, and even the teacher acknowledges it, calling it serious, something that needs to be handled carefully. They debate what to do, whether to report it immediately, but hesitation lingers, the timing too suspicious, the implications too heavy, and through it all, he watches her, trying to reconcile the girl in front of him, with the situation unfolding around her. Then, quietly, almost to himself, he makes another decision. He'll find out who did this. He'll uncover the truth behind the rabbit, behind the blade, behind everything that's beginning to connect in ways he can't ignore. But even as that determination forms, a darker thought slips in, subtle yet sharp, as someone suggests the possibility that whoever is behind this must hate Yotsuya, and she, with a faint uneasy smile, responds in a way that doesn't quite match the situation, deflecting, almost playfully, as if trying to ease the tension, yet only deepening the discomfort instead. He rejects the idea outright, insisting it's not true. Though even his denial lacks certainty, and as the moment closes, the teacher takes control of the situation, deciding to keep the cutter for now and bring it to the rest of the staff, instructing them not to tell anyone else, sealing the situation in uneasy silence as the weight of what's happened settles over them, unresolved and far from over. The tension doesn't fade even after the staff takes control of the situation instead. It lingers, heavy and unresolved, following them out of the room and into the quiet stretch of evening, as one of the teachers casually offers to walk her home, her tone calm but observant, as if she's already piecing together more than she lets on, while he falls into step beside Yatsuya, the air between them thick, with everything left unsaid. They walk side by side, the city dimming around them, and he finally voices what's been circling in his mind, that what he saw days ago wasn't a hallucination, that Mido was real, and even as he says it, doubt creeps in, tangled with the realization that if what happened years ago is connected, then whatever punishment followed should already be over. Yet the unease refuses to settle. Yatsuya stays close, her presence quiet but persistent, until she suddenly reaches out, tugging lightly at his sleeve, her small voice asking him to wait. And when their hands brush, then linger, something fragile forms between them again. A brief warmth, breaking through the cold uncertainty. They sit together, and she apologizes softly, worrying that she might be causing trouble for him, that he brushes it off, insisting it's fine, that they'll figure things out somehow, even as the weight of everything presses down on him. She shifts the conversation gently, asking if he'll come with her tomorrow, suggesting they go somewhere together, and when he assumes she means the museum, she pauses, her expression unreadable for just a second, before the moment slips away, leaving only that same soft smile. Elsewhere, the teacher reflects quietly, noting how strange it all feels that despite everything happening, It somehow feels like much more time has passed than it should have. Morning comes again, and Yotsuya stands alone in her room, carefully choosing what to wear, her excitement returning in small, quiet bursts as she thinks about their plans, about the museum date she's been looking forward to, her soft laughter filling the space as she imagines it all going perfectly, as if nothing else in the world could interfere. But that fragile sense of normalcy cracks the moment her mother appears unexpectedly, questioning her, teasing her about whether she's going on a date, her words casual yet sharp enough to make Yotsuya freeze for just a second, caught between embarrassment and something else, something quieter, something uncertain, before the moment hangs there, unresolved. The uneasy calm stretches just a little longer, lingering in the spaces between their thoughts, as the teacher's quiet reflection echoes how strange it feels that so much has happened in what should have only been a single day, as if time itself has warped around them, compressing fear, confusion, and fleeting happiness into something far heavier than it should be. Yotsuya, meanwhile, clings to that fragile happiness, her hands clasped together as she smiles to herself, softly admitting that she's glad. But elsewhere, his thoughts refuse to settle. He drifts through the quiet streets, exhaustion written into every movement, recalling how he spent the entire night searching for Mito, chasing a shadow he barely understands, admitting to himself that he hasn't slept at all. The memory lingers, overlapping with the present, and though he tries to dismiss it, it clings stubbornly, as if something unresolved is drawing him back in, no matter how hard he resists. A darker thought slips in, one he doesn't want to face, that whatever punishment came from the past should already be over, that it shouldn't still be affecting them now, and yet the image of blood, of violence, of something deliberately cruel, refuses to fade, forcing him to confront the possibility that this isn't over at all. Still, he pushes forward, telling himself to focus, to enjoy what's ahead. Morning breaks, and the world resumes its ordinary rhythm. But for Yotsuya, everything feels brighter. She stands in her room, as she imagines the day ahead, the museum, the time they'll spend together. That innocence is interrupted when her mother suddenly appears, catching her off guard, questioning her with a teasing curiosity that immediately flusters her. Her face flushing as she tries to deny it, stumbling over her words, while her mother presses just enough to make it impossible to stay composed. She insists she's not staying out overnight, her voice loud with embarrassment, while her mother casually throws out remarks that only make it worse, treating it like something obvious. Even as she leaves the house, those words follow her, muttered complaints under her breath, as she calls her mother crazy, though the warmth in her expression betrays her, showing she isn't truly upset. Outside, she pauses, glancing down at herself, asking quietly if she looks all right, if everything is in place, before continuing forward with renewed determination. But even that moment doesn't pass smoothly. Her usual clumsiness catches up to her as she stumbles into someone, the impact sudden, jarring, sending her into a flurry of apologies as she panics, convinced she's caused trouble again, while the other person brushes it off, insisting it's nothing, though she continues apologizing anyway, unable to stop herself. And as she hurries on, still flustered, still caught between excitement and nerves, the day begins to unfold, ordinary on the surface. One moment she's outside, moving forward with that same nervous excitement, and the next, everything cuts into darkness, her senses dulling as something presses against her, something suffocating. And when awareness finally returns, it comes with confusion, her body heavy, her thoughts scattered, as she looks around and realizes nothing makes sense. This isn't where she's supposed to be. This isn't the path she was just walking. And the question slips out instinctively. Where am I? The memory flickers back in fragments. The collision, the sudden closeness. The cloth pressed over her face, and the realization creeps in, slowly, chilling and undeniable. She tries to move, but something's wrong. Her hands won't respond, bound tightly, her body restrained in a way that makes panic rise instantly, her breathing quickening as the situation finally settles into something terrifyingly real. And then, as if answering that fear, the door slides open. A familiar figure steps in, calm, smiling, Mito. The same girl who's been lingering at the edge of everything, now standing directly in front of her, as if she's always belonged here, as if this moment was inevitable. She greets her casually, almost cheerfully, while Yotsuya struggles to process it, her thoughts racing, questions spilling over each other. Who are you? Why is this happening? Why does this feel so wrong? And yet Mito only tilts her head slightly, amused, asking if she really hasn't heard of her. before introducing herself as if they're meeting under normal circumstances. The name lands heavily. Midu Saki. Recognition flickers not from memory, but from something she's been told, something connected to him, and the tension sharpens instantly, her body stiffening despite the restraints. But Midu doesn't react to that fear, not in any expected way. Instead, she continues speaking lightly, almost playfully, telling her to call him Kazumi, and to tell him she's been taken hostage. Her tone so casual, it makes the words feel even more disturbing, as if this is all just part of some strange game. Yotsuya hesitates, confusion mixing with fear, but before she can even decide what to do, Midu lifts a phone, smiling as she explains she's already handled it. Already sent a message saying she'll be late, brushing it off with a soft laugh, as if she's simply being considerate. And then, almost absent-mindedly, she adds something else, something far more unsettling. She borrowed her finger. The meaning doesn't fully register at first, but the way she says it, the ease in her voice, sends a chill through the room. And before Yotsuya can react, Midu steps closer, her expression shifting just slightly, not losing that smile, but sharpening around the edges, as she asks a simple question, "Shall we begin?" The air tightens. Fear surges. Yotsuya's body trembles as something cold presses against her, the sensation sudden, invasive, and then pain, slicing sting, that tears through the fragile illusion that this might not be real. Her voice breaking into a raw scream, as blood spills, the reality of what's happening crashing down all at once, her mind unable to keep up with it, unable to escape it, and Midu just watches, calm, observing, almost curious. She comments lightly, almost disappointed, noting that the blade seems dull, as if the only issue is its efficiency, her tone completely detached from the suffering in front of her, before her gaze drifts again, lingering, studying, taking in every reaction like it's something worth remembering. She even compliments her softly, disturbingly, her attention drawn to things that shouldn't matter in a moment like this, blurring the line between cruelty and something far more unsettling. Then, without warning, she pulls at her, forcing her closer, tightening her hold, as Yotsuya struggles, tears streaming down her face, her voice breaking into desperate pleas, begging her to stop, begging for this to end. But Mido doesn't stop. She only adjusts, only shifts the angle, her voice lowering, as she suggests something new, something worse. Maybe they should send photos to him. The words hit harder than anything else, the implication twisting into something unbearable, as Yotsuya shakes her head desperately, unable to even form a proper response, her fear overwhelming, her body shaking uncontrollably, as Mido gently lifts her chin, forcing her to look forward, asking again, almost sweetly, if she wants him to see her like this. The question lingers, heavy and suffocating. And then, finally, something breaks. Through tears and trembling breaths, the truth spills out not as an answer to Mido. She wanted him to praise her. That's all. To notice her, to see her. She thought if he did, if he saw her like that, maybe it would mean something. Maybe it would be enough. Mido watches her, then smiles, softly, but there's nothing warm about it. Midu's smile lingers, soft and almost understanding, as Yotsuya's trembling confession hangs in the air. She just wanted him to praise her, to notice her, and for a brief second, the tension shifts, as if that fragile honesty has reached something human inside her. Because she leans in slightly, her tone gentler now, apologizing, saying she was moved by those words, even admitting that anyone would expect something like that from a date, her hand brushing against Yotsuya's face, wiping away tears, with a strange, almost comforting touch that doesn't match the situation at all. She hums softly, smiling, as if everything that just happened was nothing more than a misunderstanding, and Yotsuya can only stare, confused and shaken, unable to grasp the sudden shift, while Midu continues, casually admitting that she thinks about those things too, that when she likes someone, she also imagines wanting to look cute for them, her voice light, almost teasing, as if they're sharing something ordinary. For a moment, it feels like the nightmare might loosen its grip, but then it twists. Midu laughs. Not softly, not gently, but sharply, her voice breaking into something unhinged as she stares at Yotsuya's tear-streaked face, pointing out how obvious it is, how she's already been thinking about things like underwear for him, her laughter echoing unnaturally as the room tightens again, suffocating, the earlier warmth vanishing completely. Yotsuya freezes, unable to respond, caught between humiliation and fear, while Midu lifts her phone, showing it off with a grin, commenting on how priceless that expression is, how she thought he would want to see it too. Her words circling back to that same twisted idea, reducing everything into something to be shown, something to be used. Then, just as abruptly, her tone softens again, almost reassuring, telling her it's just puberty, that it's messing with her head, that she'll be fine, and that this will be their little secret. The contradiction's so sharp, it only deepens the dread, instead of easing it. But even as she says that, her hands move again, tearing through fabric without hesitation. The sound of ripping cutting through the room, as she casually adds that as long as she's not with Kazumi, it doesn't matter. Her blade hovering close as she warns her not to move, not because she cares, but because she might cut her if she does, her smile never fading. Yotsuya's body shakes uncontrollably, tears streaming endlessly as she sobs, completely powerless. Her clothes torn away piece by piece, until nothing feels like hers anymore, while Midu watches with quiet satisfaction, eventually stepping back to admire her work, cheerfully announcing she's finished, as if this was all just some task she needed to complete, even commenting on how strange it must feel to have her clothes ripped off, her tone disturbingly casual. She reminds her again, almost playfully, that no one is coming to save her, that there's no hero in this story, her words settling like a final weight, as Yotsuya's sobs weaken into something smaller, something broken. Still, Midu isn't done. She crouches down again, tilting her head as she asks another question, curious, probing how far did things go with Kazumi. Her voice light, as if it's just harmless curiosity, even as she raises the cutter again, pressing further, asking if they've kissed, insisting there's no reason to hide anything anymore. Yotsuya shakes her head desperately, barely able to speak, her voice cracking as she denies it. But Midu doesn't fully believe her, leaning in suddenly, closing the distance without warning, and before Yotsuya can react, their lips meet, forced, invasive, a test disguised as something else, leaving her frozen, eyes wide with shock, as tears spill even harder, her body refusing to respond. Midu pulls back just as quickly, watching her reaction closely, murmuring that she thought she'd be able to tell if she was lying or not, her gaze sharp, analytical, before casually asking if she heard what she wanted to hear, as if this entire moment was just an experiment. Yotsuya breaks down completely, begging her to stop, to let her go, her voice raw and desperate. But Mido only glances at her phone as it buzzes, the message displayed clearly, Kazumi replying that he understands, that he'll come in about 2 hours, and she smiles again, that same quiet, unsettling smile, murmuring that they have time now, plenty of it, before lifting the blade once more, her eyes gleaming faintly as she leans closer and whispers, almost playfully, that they should have some fun. Meanwhile, far away from that room, everything still looks normal, classrooms half filled, quiet chatter, the ordinary rhythm of a day that has no idea what's unfolding elsewhere until a phone vibrates sharply, breaking that illusion, and he answers without thinking, only for his voice to falter the second he hears who it is, the name hitting him like a shock. Yotsuya. But something is wrong, the tone, the pause, the way the voice doesn't quite feel like hers, and then it comes. I'm Mido, calm, unmistakable, sending a jolt through him so strong, his body freezes mid-step. Her words follow casually, as if they're just continuing a conversation that never ended, telling him it's been a while, that she'll be waiting where it all happened before, in that same classroom tied to memories he's tried to bury. Her voice light, almost playful, as she adds that Yotsuya won't be available for a while, that he should come alone, that he shouldn't bring anyone, each instruction tightening around him like a trap. And before he can even process it, the call ends, leaving only silence and the sound of his own pulse racing in his ears. He moves before thinking, feet slamming against the ground as panic takes over, breath breaking, vision narrowing, the words repeating over and over, Yotsuya, until they're all that's left, his thoughts unraveling into fear so raw, it strips everything else away. And as he runs through empty halls, up staircases past quiet corridors, his voice finally tears out, calling her name again and again, louder, more desperate each time, as if just saying it might somehow reach her. The door bursts open, and there she is. Midu stands waiting, exactly where she said she would be, her expression calm, almost pleased, as if she's been expecting him all along, greeting him with a soft smile, her voice light, as she says it's been a long time, while he freezes at the sight of her, breath caught, body rigid, unable to fully process that she's right in front of him again, real, undeniable. His eyes dart past her instantly, searching, frantic. Where is she? Where's Yotsuya? But Mido cuts through that panic with ease, calling him stupid, pointing out how he came exactly as she wanted, how he actually waited after receiving that fake message, her words laced with quiet amusement as she holds up the phone, casually admitting she sent it, twisting everything he believed just enough to make the situation feel even more suffocating. He demands answers, his voice breaking as he asks what she did, what happened to Yotsuya. But Mido only shrugs slightly, her tone shifting into something almost conversational, as she says she enjoyed her time with her, the simplicity of it making it far worse, making his stomach drop as the implication settles in. The tension tightens further when he tries to raise his voice, only for her to gently tell him not to yell, reminding him how long it's been since they've spoken calmly like this, her words oddly intimate, like they share something he doesn't want to acknowledge. And before he can respond, she steps closer, her presence closing in as she says it plainly, "You're here," her voice softer now, almost satisfied. His thoughts spiral, confusion clashing with anger, with fear, with something deeper he doesn't want to face, and she watches it all unfold, asking quietly if he really thought he could be tricked so easily, as if everything he's done up to this point has already been anticipated, already planned for. Then, without warning, she shifts again, her smile widening slightly as she brings up the past, saying this isn't like that time with Fumika. Her words cutting straight through him, dragging that buried memory back to the surface, before her hand moves quick, precise, the blade flashing as it slices, and his scream rips out instantly, raw and uncontrolled, echoing through the empty space as the pain hits all at once, sharp and undeniable. And she just watches, smiling. Then, as if shifting the conversation rather than the situation, she asks him something completely out of place. Whether he thinks Yotsuya is still alive. Her tone, light, almost conversational, like she's asking about the weather. And the question hits him harder than the pain itself, forcing his mind to snap toward it, to cling to it, because the alternative is too much to bear. He answers instinctively, desperately, insisting she has to be alive, that she must be somewhere in the school, because if she were dead, then this wouldn't be a hostage situation at all. His voice shaking as he tries to hold on to logic, onto hope, onto anything that keeps him from collapsing completely. Tears stream down his face as he repeats it, as if saying it enough times might make it true. And Mido listens, quietly, before acknowledging it in her own way, agreeing that it's important, that of course he would think that, though there's something in her tone that doesn't quite align. Something that makes it feel like she's humoring him, rather than reassuring him. She turns slightly, her gaze drifting as she continues speaking, bringing up things he doesn't expect, his life, his habits, the way he's lived up until now, pointing out how he didn't have many friends, how aside from Fumika his connections were shallow. Her words peeling back layers he never offered, revealing things she shouldn't know. And when he reacts confused asking how she knows any of this, she answers simply, almost proudly. She's been watching him. For a long time, since middle school. The weight of that settles slowly, uneasily, as she elaborates, describing details with unsettling precision. How he used to draw every day after school, how his lights would stay on until 1 in the morning, how he arrived early, how he acted during his first date with Yotsuya, each observation stacking on top of the last, until it becomes undeniable. She hasn't just seen him, she's been studying him, quietly, consistently, without him ever realizing. His thoughts begin to fracture under that realization, trying to reconcile how long this has been happening, how much she knows, and whether anything about his life has truly been his own. She smiles again, softer now, almost fond. As she says it plainly she loves him and the word feels wrong coming from her, twisted by everything surrounding it. As she continues, explaining that the Mido he thought he saw before wasn't a hallucination, that she's always been there, always close, even days ago when everything began to spiral, her presence constant, deliberate. She steps closer, her voice lowering slightly, as she asks him something else, something sharper, whether he's angry, whether he resents the fact that he didn't warn Yotsuya, that he let things happen the way they did, and the question cuts deeper than anything else so far. Because it forces him to confront something he's been avoiding. Something buried beneath fear and confusion. She watches his reaction carefully, then continues, almost thoughtfully, explaining that she decided to watch over him for a while, especially when he started dating Yotsuya, because after everything he did, she couldn't just leave him alone. Her reasoning calm, structured, as if this entire situation follows a logic that only she understands. And then, with quiet certainty, she declares that Kazumi is her love, her hands pressing lightly against her chest as she smiles, her expression soft, sincere in a way that clashes violently with everything else she's done, and yet she doesn't see the contradiction at all. Memories begin to overlap in his mind. Fragments of the past surfacing, her confession long ago, the way he rejected her, the distance he created, and she brings it back herself, asking him again if he'll go out with her now, reminding him that she's been waiting since they were children, that she's held on to that moment all this time, her voice carrying a quiet persistence that hasn't faded, hasn't weakened, only grown stronger. He struggles to respond, caught between fear, guilt, and disbelief, trying to explain that he shouldn't even be talking to her like this, that this situation isn't something that can be resolved with words like that. But she interrupts gently, almost dismissively, saying she knows, that she understands, that she was just waiting for the moment when she could finally talk to him properly, when he would be able to listen. She steps back slightly, her gaze softening again as she looks at him, almost kindly, as she says she forgives him, the words landing quietly but carrying an unsettling weight, before adding one last thought that Yotsuya was too fickle for him anyway, her tone light, almost casual, as if she's simply stating a fact, leaving the implication hanging in the air as everything falls into a tense, suffocating silence. The word forgive hangs awkwardly between them, almost absurd, against everything that's happened, and he can't even process it properly, repeating it back in disbelief as his expression tightens, confusion quickly giving way to anger, his voice rising as he demands to know what she's even talking about, what exactly she thinks she's forgiving. His emotions finally spill over, raw and uncontrolled, as he shouts at her, asking if she realizes what she's done, his hands shaking as the weight of everything crashes down on him, Fumika, Yotsuya, all of it tangled together in a way he can't untangle anymore, while she simply watches, her expression barely shifting, absorbing his anger without resistance. He stumbles over his words, trying to hold on to something, anything, insisting he'll find Yotsuya himself if she won't tell him, his voice desperate, clinging to that last thread of hope. But she responds calmly, almost dismissively, calling him stupid, her tone soft yet cutting as she adds that she's just a weak girl, the contradiction sitting heavily between her words and everything she's done. Then she lifts her phone slightly, her gaze flicking toward it as she asks him something that doesn't immediately make sense. Did he really think she could carry everything out alone? And the implication hits him a second too late, his body stiffening as realization creeps in, the possibility forming before he can stop it. An accomplice, someone else involved, something even bigger than what he's been trying to grasp. The thought barely settles before a sound cuts through the tension, the faint vibration of a phone, and his eyes snap toward it, spotting it resting nearby, abandoned. And in that instant everything clicks just enough for him to move, muttering under his breath that she must have placed it there herself, that this was all planned, all deliberate. But before he can act, she moves first, fast, closing the distance in an instant, forcing him back down as the struggle breaks out, his body reacting on instinct, despite the pain, despite the fear, trying to resist, trying to create space, but she doesn't hesitate, doesn't falter, her movements sharp and decisive as she pins him again, the brief hope collapsing just as quickly as it appeared. He shouts her name, anger and desperation mixing together, but she only looks down at him, almost amused, pointing out how easily he fell for it again, how even now he's still reacting exactly the way she expects. She kneels closer, her presence overwhelming, and for a moment her tone softens again, almost gentle, as she casually mentions borrowing Yotsuya's phone, as if that explains everything, as if that makes any of this normal, before adding that carrying something dangerous like this really isn't a good idea, her fingers brushing lightly over the cutter, her voice drifting between concern and mockery, in a way that makes it impossible to tell which one she actually means. Then, just as suddenly, she shifts again. Her expression softens, her voice lowers. She tells him she was worried, that she thought he might have been cheating on her. The words landing so strangely that they almost don't register at first, her gaze steady, sincere, in a way that feels completely disconnected from reality, and as he stares at her, stunned, unable to respond, she adds it quietly. She likes him like this. Like this. Broken, helpless, unable to escape. Her eyes darken slightly as she leans in, reassuring him not to worry, telling him it's fine, that she's single. As if that somehow resolves everything. As if that justifies everything. Her smile widening just a little as she promises to prove it to him. Her voice dipping into something softer, something far more unsettling. And as she looks down at him, completely at ease in the chaos she's created, she finishes it simply. She'll show him, with proof. She leans in closer, her weight pressing down as she straddles him, trapping him beneath her with no room to move, as her words sink in. I've been saving my first time for you. And the way she says it is so calm, so sincere, that it makes the moment even more suffocating. Her voice stays soft, almost affectionate, as she leans in closer, repeating his name like it belongs to her alone, Kazumi, while his entire body trembles beneath her, his breath uneven, his eyes wide with panic, the word shiver practically etched into his expression as fear overtakes everything else, and for a brief second, instinct kicks in. He pushes back, struggling, shouting at her to stop, his voice breaking as he tries to create distance between them, but she barely reacts, only pouting slightly as if he's being unreasonable, telling him not to be so violent, her tone almost childish, as though this is nothing more than a misunderstanding. He keeps resisting, desperate, his movements clumsy and frantic, but she tilts her head, watching him with mild curiosity, even pointing out the pain in his injured hand, asking if it hurts when he pulls like that, as if she's more concerned about the mechanics than his fear. And when he yells again, telling her to be quiet, the tension only tightens further. Slowly, deliberately, she adjusts herself, her movements calm, controlled, as she begins to lift her skirt slightly, telling him not to stare too much, her voice casual, almost teasing, while his reaction is immediate shock, confusion, panic all crashing together as he demands to know what she's doing. His voice rising again, cracking under the pressure. But she doesn't stop. She closes the distance again, pressing herself against him, wrapping around him with a quiet insistence, her arms tightening as she murmurs that this is embarrassing, yet her expression says otherwise, her eyes half-lidded as she asks him softly if it feels good, if this is what he wants, adding that the two of them will become one in this classroom, her words drifting between fantasy and something far more disturbing, while he freezes again, caught between disbelief and fear, unable to respond. Then, just as suddenly, she pulls back slightly, as if remembering something, her tone shifting once more, as she casually mentions that Fumika isn't here, the name dropping into the moment like a fracture. And before he can react, she turns, retrieving something she had set aside earlier, speaking lightly about how she almost forgot, how it's an important day, and that she brought her here for a reason. The air changes instantly. What she reveals next shatters whatever fragile grip he still had on reality. A small container, held carefully in her hands, her smile returning as she says it plainly, almost proudly. These are Fumika's ashes. The words don't make sense at first. He stares, uncomprehending, as she explains it without hesitation, how she wanted Fumika's remains, how she went to her house, how she found them, her tone calm, almost pleased with herself, as if she's describing something thoughtful, something meaningful, even adding that now she can always bring Fumika with her, that he can feel it too, holding the container close like it's something precious. Something inside him snaps, his voice breaks into a scream, raw and uncontrollable, as he lunges forward, knocking the container from her hands, shouting for her to put it back, to stop, his entire body shaking as he tries to reject what he's seeing, what he's hearing, but she only reacts with mild surprise, watching him as if he's the one overreacting, her expression barely changing. Even as the ashes spill, even as the moment fractures completely, she continues speaking, almost thoughtfully, suggesting they could make a small shrine, that even after death, Fumika could still stay close, her words gentle, almost comforting in a twisted way, while he shouts back, denying it, rejecting it, unable to accept any of this, his anger and grief colliding violently. The chaos erupts fully when he lashes out again, trying to destroy it, trying to stop her, screaming that he won't let her involve Fumika anymore. His voice breaking as he pushes forward, desperate to end this, but she doesn't retreat, doesn't panic. Instead, she watches him closely, almost amused, telling him that he failed, that his attempt means nothing, her calmness only making it worse. He tries again, forcing himself forward despite everything, but she moves effortlessly, stepping back just enough, pointing out how pointless it is, how if he does anything to her, he'll only lose Yotsuya too, her voice suddenly sharper, more grounded in reality, and that's what stops him. Not fear for himself, but for her, for Yotsuya, the thought freezing him in place. She sees it immediately, acknowledges it and says lightly, "You have a point," as if conceding something trivial, before turning slightly, her tone softening again, telling him to wait just a moment, as if she's about to show him something important. His breathing is heavy, uneven, as he watches her move. Confusion and dread mixing together, and then he hears it, a faint sound, a presence. His heart lurches as realization hits, his thoughts scrambling as he rushes toward it, toward the next room, his mind repeating her name over and over, Yotsuya, until finally he reaches the door, his hand trembling as he pushes it open, the words forming in his mind, almost disbelieving. She was here, right next door, this whole time, and when a door opens, the truth is laid bare. Yotsuya, bound tightly to a chair, her body trembling, her mouth restrained, her eyes wide with fear, tears streaming down her face, as she struggles weakly against the restraints, but barely holding on. And behind her, Mito's voice drifts in softly, almost cheerful, as if presenting something she's been waiting to reveal all along. She's still alive, for now. The sight of her bound, trembling, barely able to breathe hits him harder than anything before. His voice cracking as her name finally leaves his lips. Watsuya. The syllables breaking apart under the weight of what he's seeing, while behind her, Mito stands calmly, hands resting on the chair like she's presenting something precious. She explains Yotsuya can't hear him anyway, the headphones covering her ears, cutting her off from everything but the fear surrounding her. He lunges forward instinctively, anger erupting, shouting at Mito, demanding to know what she's done, but she silences him immediately, a single finger raised to her lips, her expression darkening just slightly, as she whispers that she'll kill her if he makes too much noise, the threat landing instantly, freezing him in place, as shock overtakes his anger, his body locking up under the weight of it. Then, just as quickly, she softens again. Well, as you can see, her tone is almost casual, as if the answer is obvious, as if nothing here needs explaining, and before he can react, she leans in closer to Yotsuya, smiling brightly, wrapping an arm around her as if comforting her. Even as Yotsuya's body recoils weakly, her muffled cries barely audible, her entire form shaking under the pressure of Mito's touch. The words land with a sickening lightness, completely detached from reality, and his eyes widen in horror as he watches her hand move, grabbing, pressing, treating her like something to play with rather than someone to protect, while Yotsuya whimpers helplessly, her body flinching at every movement, unable to escape, unable to even properly cry out. Watch closely. Mito's voice turns almost instructional, like she's demonstrating something important, and he can't tear his eyes away, even as he begs her to stop, his voice cracking, his body trembling with helplessness as he watches her continue, her actions deliberate, controlled, completely unbothered by his desperation. And then, something breaks. Yotsuya's voice, muffled, fractured, finally forces its way through, not directed at Mito, not even fully at him, but spilling out in raw, uncontrollable emotion, as she cries over and over, that she hates him, that she hates Ichinose, the words distorted by sobs, by pain, by something that sounds almost forced, almost unnatural, yet still sharp enough to cut through him completely, leaving him frozen, his expression collapsing as those words sink in. He can't process it, can't accept it, but they keep coming. I hate him, I hate him. Her voice cracks with every repetition, her body shaking violently as if the words themselves are tearing her apart. And he can only stare, stunned, as guilt and confusion crash together inside him, his own voice barely forming as he whispers back, broken, apologizing without even knowing what he's apologizing for anymore. And Mito watches, smiling, satisfied. She leans in again, her tone almost thoughtful now, explaining it as if it's something simple, something logical, that this is her punishment for liking him, her fingers tracing along Yotsuya's body as she casually points out the marks, the cuts, calling them proof, saying she made her say those things, that she asked her she wanted to stab him, that she kept cutting her until she said she hated him, her voice steady, almost analytical, as if she's describing an experiment rather than torture. She even pauses, glancing at him, asking lightly if the cuts bother him, if they're not deep enough to matter, adding casually that it would hurt much more if she started cutting pieces off. The words delivered so calmly, they feel even more horrifying. His body trembles, his mind unraveling, but she continues, stepping back slightly, as if giving him space to think, to respond, her voice softening again. as she asks something that feels completely disconnected from everything else. Whether he loves her enough. Whether that love would last forever if nothing interrupted them. Her expression gentle, almost hopeful, as if she's asking something sincere. And then she tilts her head, her gaze steady, her voice quiet. If she died, would you love me? The question hangs there, suffocating, unavoidable, and before he can even respond, before he can even process it, she adds one more condition, one final demand, her voice lowering into something soft, almost intimate as she looks between them. I won't hurt Yotsuya anymore, if you say it correctly this time. Silence falls, heavy, unforgiving. Yotsuya trembles in the chair, her muffled sobs continuing as she clasps her hands together desperately, as if begging without words, while he stands there, frozen, tears welling in his eyes. His entire body shaking under the weight of what she's asking, what she's forcing him to choose. And then quietly, almost gently, can you say it? Her eyes lock onto his. For me? The silence stretches unbearably, her question still hanging in the air, repeating that she won't hurt Yotsuya anymore if he answers correctly this time. His lips part. But nothing comes out at first. His thoughts collapsing under the weight of it, until finally, painfully, he forces out words not what she wants, but the truth he can't abandon, saying that if she wants him to say something like that, then she should torture him instead, his voice breaking as he lowers his head, refusing to let it land on Yotsuya, refusing to let her suffer more because of him, even as his entire body shakes. Mido pauses, just for a moment. Her expression flickers with confusion, perhaps something else, before she asks quietly, almost curiously, why Yotsuya would go that far for her. He answers without hesitation, his voice still trembling but firm in a way it hasn't been before, because he doesn't want to hurt the people he likes. The words settle, simple and honest, and for a brief second, the atmosphere shifts, something almost gentle passing through Mido's expression as she smiles faintly, repeating it back in her own way, as if testing the weight of it, as if trying to understand something she's never quite grasped. But it doesn't last. The moment fractures again, as she turns away, her tone cooling, saying quietly that if Kazumi cheats on her, then she'll punish Yotsuya, the one who stole him, her logic twisted, but unwavering, her steps slow as she moves, pulling something from her pocket, the faint click of it echoing sharply, as she reveals a syringe, holding it casually, as if it's just another tool in this game. He freezes, confusion flashing across his face, asking what she's doing, but she only glances at him, with that same calm smile, asking if they aren't similar, as if they're somehow the same, before reminding him again, almost gently, that she's told him many times, if he cheats on her. She doesn't finish the sentence. She doesn't need to. The meaning is already there. Then suddenly her tone sharpens. I won't wait anymore. The words cut through everything, final and absolute, and before he can react, her hand moves, the syringe spinning lightly between her fingers before she lunges forward, the motion quick, decisive, and in that instant, panic takes over completely, as he shouts, voice cracking, telling her he'll do as she says, that he understands, anything to stop her, but he's too late. The motion has already begun, with the needle driving forward in a sharp, sickening moment as it pierces Yotsuya's body, causing her to jerk and let out a muffled cry beneath the headphones. Tears stream down her face as her entire form trembles violently from the pain, while he screams her name, raw and desperate, his voice tearing through the space as he watches helplessly, unable to stop or undo it. Mido watches quietly, almost curiously, as if observing the result. As the moment settles, she tilts her head slightly, murmuring something under her breath, almost disappointed, almost thoughtful, before looking back at him, her expression softening once more into that same unsettling calm. He stares, frozen, his mind unraveling completely, his voice breaking again as he begs her to stop, to end it, but she only smiles faintly, shaking her head as if it's too late for that now, as if things have already moved beyond that point. She says softly, now. His breath catches, his body locking again, and she steps closer to Yotsuya, placing a hand gently on her shoulder, as if comforting her, even as the girl trembles uncontrollably beneath her touch, whispering something only she can hear, before turning back slightly, her attention shifting once more. Then, slowly, she raises the blade again. Let's hear you say that again, right now, and this time there's no hesitation left in him, only desperation, only fear, only the need to make it stop as his voice finally gives in completely. breaking as he says it, that he'll listen to anything she says and begging her to stop, asking her to calm down. Mito exhales softly, almost satisfied, before speaking again, saying it was a broken promise that started all of this, her gaze distant for just a second, as though she's revisiting something only she fully understands. All right, she steps closer to him again, closing the distance slowly, and then, gently, almost tenderly, Mito leans closer as kisses him, as if that's the perfect moment to do such thing. So we wrap up today's video here. If you want us to cover a complete story, then comment down below part 2, and don't forget to like and subscribe. See you next time.